Well, welcome back. This is the sixth of 6 videos looking at Chapter 13 from Wheeler's Most Excellent Textbook on Security Risk Management. What we're going to be doing during this is finishing up our architectural risk analysis. So if you recall from the last video, we went through a plethora of tables looking at different functional requirements and different enhancements, and then making decisions and then examining different technologies that might solve that. During this phase, we're actually going to select them based on those functional requirements that we just went through identifying, and we're going to combine that with any enhancement requirements, again, that we covered in that phase 2 of requirements, looking at things, and then we'll note where we've got any exceptions that are going to have to go forward. Now, as we move into the next phase, this is an optional phase. It depends on whether you've got an established architectural or design pattern already being used, or you need to go and do a risk analysis. If you're going to do a risk analysis, you're going to have to determine the threat universe rating for each flow, assign a vulnerability rating for each flow, and then calculate an overall risk sensitivity rating for each flow. So as you're doing all of this, as described in the book, you're going to use qualitative tables. You can do it in a quantitative way if you so desire, and you've got an underlying algorithm that you prefer, but most people do it in a qualitative way. Here are the tables that they were actually using within the book, so you can see the threat universe, vulnerability scale, risk sensitivity scale, risk exposure, and then recommended risk exposure levels. Notice they're keeping it simple on that last one with only 3 levels. You can expand it, of course, if you desire. And you can see up top the actual calculation there, where risk exposure is risk sensitivity times vulnerability risk times threat universe. You start to then build a table where you're doing an identification, looking at what the universe risk, vulnerability risk, risk sensitivity, and risk exposure calculation might be. Again, this lends itself to a kind of an Excel experience. From there, you're moving into control validation and placement. You may go back and, based on the information you gain through the risk analysis, recalculate based on the security control selection criteria identified by the baseline and enhancement requirements. You want to measure the reduction in risk by comparing risk exposure before and after the application of security controls. Hey, we covered that earlier in one of the videos. And then determine the appropriate placement of the resource given its risk profile. And again, we're looking at those information flows and how we're building the architecture. Where do we put this to have the greatest effect? From there, we move to documenting all of these decisions, including those exceptions, and getting, that avoid, accept, mitigate, or transfer decision in place. Typically, these are, because it's internal, typically these are going to be mitigate decisions because that's the most popular decision, but it could be one of the other decisions. We then go ahead and implement the specific controls, using the appropriate software development lifecycle, and then putting them in as part of the rollout. You're going to have an education and training and awareness campaign with that, and you're also going to have policy. From there, you move into assessment to validate that the risk exposure actually was reduced to the expected level, and that's done through compiling the evidence that it was implemented correctly, that kind of baseline accreditation that we've talked about, validating that you're getting the desired outcome, and using metrics and presenting evidence of a credible risk-based decision. All right, so we've done our assessment. We move into monitoring. Although it doesn't change on the graphic, we move into monitoring and audit, where is this ongoing process of making sure that those controls are still operating within a band of excellence and doing what they're supposed to do against their performance criteria. All right, as you're doing all of this, you're going to have to apply it to legacy systems. The principal difference here is that they're already working, so you can use additional information to make your decisions. My goodness, look at that. We're at the end of 6 of 6 videos exploring Chapter 13 of Wheeler's most excellent textbook on security risk management. We're going to get into the final chapter in the next video, where we start talking about building a program from scratch and having some kind of holistic thoughts of this whole risk management book and experience. So keep on studying, keep on learning, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.